Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of In Lay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Ascari, and today we have the Purple Wave author, Alan Aubut. How are you doing, Alan?
I'm doing fine. A little correction there. I'm one of the authors, but we have multiple authors. But I am the chief editor of the.
Well, that's okay, as long as I wasn't wrong in how I pronounced your last name.
That's fine. Yeah.
All right, Alan, let's jump right into it. We'll make our way to your Purple Wave publication, but I thought maybe we could start with a little about who you are. So, where you were born, where you were raised, what you've seen change in Canada over the decades.
Okay, sure. That's a great start. I was born in North Bay, but my mother and I moved to Nipigon, Ontario, in when I was about 2 months old. So that was in 1954. And we lived in Nipigon for about almost 4 years. And then my parents bought a property about 15 kilometers outside of town. And that's where I actually grew up. That was my formative years. All my schooling I did by taking the school bus to and from, or from and to the little town of Red Rock. That's where my father worked at the paper mill. The paper mill that has now closed and is totally gone, been demolished. Example of the local economy in northwestern Ontario. Just a quick little aside. At one time, between Sault Ste. Marie and the Manitoba border, there was 11 pulp and paper mills, and now there's 3. One of which is on standby. So only 2 operating. So that shows you a change in the local economy in northwestern Ontario. So that's one of the changes I've seen. And it's one of those things that I reflect on, that my formative years, I was in the late 60s, early 70s. And the things I didn't think anything of that I could do then, I can't do anymore. That's one of the big changes that I've seen. I went to university in Thunder Bay. I got my honors Bachelor of Science in Geology there, graduated in 1977. And there's really no jobs available, so I figured I'd continue on with my education. I went to the University of Alberta in Edmonton, got my master's there, hired on with a company called Pacific Petroleum in Calgary, just after they'd been bought by Petro-Canada. And I worked for them for a little while, and in 1980, I got a job offer with Inco Limited. That's the big mining company based out of Sudbury. Well, they had a small mine to the west of Thunder Bay at Lake Shibanawan. And so I joined Inco in 1980 as an underground geologist at the Shibanawan mine. And then after a couple of years, they were bleeding money and they needed to cut costs at the mine. And I was the low person on the totem pole. But the exploration department for the company itself was just booming, but they couldn't hire anybody. There was a hiring freeze. But I was already a full-time employee with the company, so I was offered the opportunity to transfer to the exploration department in early 1982, and that I took advantage of. And I was told at the time I was going to stay in Thunder Bay for about 2 to 3 years, and then they were going to move me down to Sudbury. Well, I never left Thunder Bay area until 1991 when they transferred me to Thompson, Manitoba. And that's where I finished my career with Inco, after which they've been bought by Vale. And from that experience, so this is kind of a long story to make it short, the 1980s are very memorable for me. Things I could do then, work-wise, personnel-wise, like I say, you just can't do anymore. And that's the biggest change I've seen. That's being a geologist. One of the things you have to be able to do is observe and notice things. And over time, that's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed was just the change. And that's actually one of the reasons I got involved in politics. So I guess that's one of the things that you were going to ask me about, why I got involved. And it boils down to you've got two choices. You can either try and work with the system as it exists now, or you can start afresh. And I decided to go the second route, and that's where Maxime Bernier comes in with the People's Party of Canada, because that's exactly what he did, and the first same reasons. He decided that he tried to work from the inside of the Conservative Party of Canada, and it just wasn't working. And so he started a new party. And the reality there, the reason he had to leave is that all of the existing parties right now really are deeply corrupt. And eventually in time, unless we're very careful, that could happen to the PPC as well. But at least we're far more pure as a political party than any of the others. And that's what appeals to me about the party and why I'm still quite active with it.
What changed? You said the 80s were very precious to you. What changed? Is it people weren't educated? Was it government overregulation? Was it industry fleeing the country?
It's the overregulation of government. Because to give you an illustration, back in the 1980s, in the mining business, in the exploration, anybody could go and buy a prospector's license, take an axe, go in the bush, blaze some trees, stake a claim. No problems. And then you would option that property off to a mining company that would explore it. And the only thing we had to do from the mining side, the mining company side, the exploration company side, was with the Ministry of Natural Resources here in Ontario, apply for a work permit. And all it was is just tell them, we're going to be working in this area. Okay, great, fine. No, thanks for telling us. And they would issue the permit, just because all it was just to know who was active in the forest. Now they're telling us how to do our business. It takes, I was at a mining conference in Manitoba in November. And the big thing there, nobody can get a permit. They apply for permits, and it takes years before you can get a permit. And then without the permit, you can't actually do any work. Ontario's not as bad, but it's still close to it, because you apply for a permit, and one of the things they ask for is where are you going to, for example, where are you going to do your diamond drilling? Because that's what we use to test the ground to find out whether or not there's any mineral there. And we don't know. That's exploration. We start off with geophysics and geological mapping and such to kind of get an idea. Well, I think there might be something in this area. Well, that's where we'll drill. But they want to know that ahead of time. Well, we haven't done any work yet. How do we know? We don't know where. And that's that's a symptom of the problem. There's just too much bureaucracy. And that's one of the statistics I've noticed there, that 1 in 4 people works for government now. And that's insane. There shouldn't be that many people working for government.
No, I agree. I'm going to add something to that. It's not just mineral exploration, what you're saying, permits. Take housing development, something ordinary people do.
Yeah.
The
This is just
permitting process.
one field of endeavor. And what you're just, yeah.
Yeah, so it's everywhere. And my question is, maybe you won't be able to answer this. What's changed in people's mindsets that they want this, that they're okay with this, that they're voting this increase in government?
Unfortunately, I think it's the mindset here in Canada that we're satisfied with the government telling us what to do. That's really what it boils down to. It's there's no allowance for personal initiative, uh, and it's something like I ran into in local municipal politics here, that when I retired from Valet, because that's the company that I ended up buying Inco. Oh, that's a little interesting side. Back in the 1970s, when I was going to university, Canada was a world leader in mining and mineral exploration. Like, we had the head offices about 6 or 7 significant companies, companies like Noranda, companies like Inco, Falconbridge, Cominco. They're all gone. We've got nothing left. They've all been bought out by foreign interests. There's nothing left. We're a hollow shell compared to what we were back in the 1970s. And like, there's another example of how things have changed. And that's part of it is in the political environment. Is that this was all allowed to happen? Like Australia, for example, they have the head office for the 2 of the 3 largest mining companies in the world. Let me think here. I got just a temporary mining block, a mental block. Broken Hill Proprietary, BHP is one. Like, BHP was an Australian company, but they merged with a major company out of Billiton, out of the Netherlands. And I believe they're number 2, and number 1 is the Anglo-American group, and originally out of Great Britain, but now both headquartered in Australia. And the reason for that is that Australia would not allow their local companies to be bought unless the merged company set up headquarters in Australia. Whereas in Canada, we laid over on our backs and allowed everything to be just stolen away. Like I mentioned about Inco, Inco's now a Brazilian company, Vale, that owns that. And I thought Inco, when I was working for it, was suffering from severe bureaucracy, and that paled in comparison once I got to see what the Brazilians instituted. Now they know bureaucracy and how inefficient it can be and is. And that's one of the sad things I've seen, is that I was proud to work for a company that had just recently, at one point, I think it was 2006, Inco celebrated 100 years of continuous operation. That's a phenomenal milestone for any company, because there companies that last that long are few and far between, and now it's gone. And so much has changed, and that's one of the biggest things I noticed, that when we look around us and we look at all the problems that we identify, the first thing at the top of the list as to causing that is politics. And that's one reason I'm really surprised at how few people, especially here in Canada, actually want to talk about politics. My mother, for example, she's a long-time liberal. And so she'd start talking politics in her way, which is the biased liberal view. And I tell her, no, you're not talking politics. You're talking the liberal propaganda. And then after a while, anytime anything political would come up, and she would, I don't talk politics. No, you don't talk liberal. That's different. So,
Alan, let me ask you
a chance to ask another question.
A follow-up question along the same lines. You mentioned how the corporation, a lot of them have been bought out. What is the benefit to the nation for keeping the corporations within the country and not opening it up to essentially globalization?
Oh, there's so many benefits. The biggest one is the head office itself. It's located in the country where we live. Like now, yeah, they still maintain offices, but the number of people employed at the head office, or what is the national head office, is minuscule compared to what it was at one time. So, like Inco, for example, they had 2 floors of one of the Toronto Toronto Dominion Center complex. Oh, they would move every so often. All depended on who gave them the best deal for a lease. But they usually had 2 full floors. That was their head office down in Toronto. And now I think they've got a small office, maybe a part of a floor, because the rest of it it's in Brazil. Oh, there's no need to have anybody here in Canada. And that's also one of the examples of the bureaucracy experience. Like we've lost the freedom to do things, even the businesses. Like speaking of Inco, they had a purchasing department at each of the mine sites. So Sudbury had a purchasing department. Thompson, Manitoba had a purchasing department. And then once Vale took over, just a quick little aside for Vale, I kind of find it interesting. The company originally was CVRD, Campania Vale Rio Doce, which is literally translates from the Portuguese to the Sugar River Valley Company, because that's where they started off, the Sugar River. But regardless, so once they took over, they centralized purchasing, and it had to go through their head office down in Brazil. And one little anecdote is that Thompson, they needed to get a lift of plywood. So that's a full stack of plywood, 4x8 sheets of plywood. And so they had to go through the purchasing department. The purchasing department, they put out a query, okay, who can give us the best price? And they got a price for someone that would supply it for X dollars down in Southern Ontario. Oh, okay, we accept that offer. The only thing is, by the time it reached Thompson, the shipping cost of getting it there, it was twice as much than if they had bought it in Thompson. So that was the effect of it, that it just made things more expensive, fewer people employed, and it's just a snowball effect of how the bureaucracy, and it's a phrase that I use a lot, unfortunately, like even in my writing, is that the parasites have taken over. A parasite sucks the blood out and gives nothing back. And our country is dying because of this excess number of parasites.
I think you and I are ideologically aligned on that. Like, I think people should be free. You need free enterprise. You need individual responsibility. And then from that, you get rights. And every once in a while, I meet someone like you, and I have a great conversation. And then I go out in the real world and I meet these people who say, without government, who's going to build the roads? We need government, So it can be disturbing sometimes. I know
Well,
mutual friend.
unfortunately, there is a need for government. Yeah. Oh, Arnold, yeah. There's a need for government to a point, and that's for communal services, and that's where roads come in, where we all chip in for something that we all share. But that's where government has gone off the rails. It's gone way past that, and it's not providing communal services anymore. It's telling us how to live our lives, and that's they've overstepped their bounds, and that's the source of our problem. And that's one thing that I really like about Maxime. He knows that, he realizes that, and that's one reason why, from when he started the PPC, he has been 100% consistent. There's not been any wavering of what the party platform is. It's very simple: small government, because you do need government for, like I say, communal activities. It's kind of like a cooperative where that's one of the things I admire about Western Canada, because that's where the cooperative system really operates a lot, where you have a lot of independent businessmen, farmers, because each farmer is an independent businessman, and they get together to acquire goods and services that they all need and take over partial ownership of. That's what a cooperative is. So you cooperate with your competitors to mutual benefit. Yet you still try to profit as best you can with your farm. And that's really how government in general should operate. And it doesn't anymore. And we're seeing that like with the liberals and even there really is no difference between the liberals and the conservatives. No, they say the same thing, but use different words. And they've sold us out to the foreign interests. So we've already been gutted in our industries, and now they're trying to gut the rest of the country out. What was the phrase that Trudeau said, that we're now post-nationalist? And then the World Economic Forum there, Klaus Schwab, that will own nothing and be happy. No, I'm not happy. I'm not happy at all.
He's right about the other thing, though.
So there's a situation. Yeah. And we see the effects of that. You go to any of the reserves, Native Indian reserves, and there's an illustration of the problem. They own nothing. And you look at their homes; they're all run down and poor condition and such, because they can't buy their own homes. There's no pride in ownership, no feeling of like, I'm going to put effort into this because it's mine. And that's one of the things, like, what's it? Again, the original economist there from Scotland.
Scotland.
I just can't think of his name. Anyways, Smith.
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith. Yeah.
I didn't know he was from Scotland.
And yeah, Scottish. And the thing about Adam Smith, though, is that it's just that personal connection. That's what freedom is the foundation of. And that's where free enterprise comes into play, that you and I, we come to a mutual agreement where we're both happy. And that's where we make a deal. And that's what free enterprise is all about. And it's that personal, and that's where it was a critical component, is having personal ownership. Personal ownership of your land, personal ownership of your castle on that land, your home. And that's what our natives don't have. And that's one reason why there's for a lot of them are still suffering. The only ones who don't are the ones who don't live on reserve, because they actually have the opportunity to own land and own their own home, own their own vehicle, take care of everything, take pride in what they have. And that's what we need to get back to is like, what was it? I just saw something recently, like you mentioned earlier, about home ownership. And to have a new home, roughly 40% of it is related to government taxes and fees. Like, that's insane. Like, they shouldn't be taking all of that. Well, that's one reason why it's almost impossible to buy a home. I know my wife and I, our first home, we struggled. And that back in those days, they had a home ownership savings plan. you could put money into it, and whatever money you put into it, you didn't pay taxes on, but then you can use that for your very first home as towards your down payment. And that's what we used. And uh, we didn't have very much money. Like we got married while I was still going to university. So never had a nest egg or anything like that. We struggled the first few years. When we lived in Calgary, we rented. We knew at that time we would never be able to afford a home. In time, we did. It was a real struggle. That was the early 1980s. We bought our first house, and we assumed a mortgage on an old house. And there's a rental apartment, and that made the difference. That's how we were able to financially succeed at it. And then we eventually sold it. We got pretty much what we got for it and a little bit more. And we bought another house. And then when we moved to Thompson, Manitoba, it appreciated enough that we gained a bit there. And even then we pretty much struggled. When we left Thompson, I wasn't sure if we were even going to break even on our house there, because the housing market had collapsed a bit. But in the end, we did get a bit. And I'm not rich or anything like that. I'm comfortable, but we do own our own home. It's been quite a struggle, but we do own our own home. And I really feel for a lot of the youngsters these days that it's even tougher now for them than it was for us.
So
and the
if I can jump
opportunities
in,
aren't.
Alan,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a
Yeah.
question. You mentioned that you sold your home and you moved to a new home. Did you, wherever you were, and at that time, did you have a transfer tax you had to pay?
No, that was in 1980s, and there was no transfer tax. I'm just trying to think if there's no. There is. We sold the one. We were able to pay off the second mortgage and the first mortgage with the proceeds from the sale, and we had a little bit left over, and that worked towards the down payment on the newer house that we bought. So that's the second time around, and then the third time. No, at no time was there any kind of transfer tax.
So
The most recent purchase was the house that we have now, and we bought that, I think, around 2006 from my father-in-law.
the reason I ask that, because the transfer tax to me it's very heinous. They're punishing you for exercising your right to move. And this isn't like a $2,000 flat tax. It's based on the value of your house, and it's very high.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The taxation these days is just insane because no, we're seeing that going on right now in Ottawa. The Liberals are real spendthrifts. They spend every cent that they collect in taxes and then some. Well, no, and then more, a lot more. What's the latest
62
budget
billion.
deficit? Is 60-some billion dollars. And they know sooner or later it's going to come to a head, so they keep trying to scrabble and get any little tax they can. And it's getting out of control. The Fraser Institute had it, 46% of the average person pays in taxes. So the average person, if you remember, like the average is usually a bell curve. So the peak, that's the average. So 50% above that pay more than 46%. And the other 50%, they pay less. But there is a component of the population, 50% of the population pay more than 50% or 46% in taxes. And that's usually those who can't afford it in the first place, the low-income people. No, they're the ones that they're stuck. No.
Alan, let's put a pin in that. We're going to go to that right now in a moment on your Purple Wave newsletter.
Okay.
One last thing I wanted to ask you. You mentioned way at the beginning, your father worked at a pulp mill. And I think you said there was 11 pulp mills from Sault Ste. Marie to somewhere. Um, and you mentioned that your father and your mother, they bought a house. Uh, would it be accurate to say that they were able to buy a house because there was local industry, because there were opportunities, and things were just less regulated, they were cheaper, or was it a different reason?
No, it was definitely cheaper, and they struggled with it as well. That's an interesting little story in itself. It was a 4-room shack. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. It had running water. We had cold water. That's it. There's a well. There's a pump in a little uh, alcove in one room that accessed the well, and all it was cold water. We had no hot water unless we heat it up on the stove, and the stove originally was a wood-fired stove, which had been then converted to fuel oil fired, and the heat for the building was uh, an oil space heater right in the middle of the house. And in the end, 1967, the house burnt down. And it was traumatic, but also was a blessing because my mother was trying to figure out how to put together the few pennies that we had as a family. Because at that time, there was 5 kids and my parents, and in this 4-room shack, and how to expand on it. And my father was reasonably well paid, but he wasn't making very much at that time. And as it turned out, he was able to get a loan from the Veterans Land through the Veterans Land Act, VLA, and we had a new home built to modern standards at that time. And that changed things dramatically for us as a family. But there again, one of the benefits was where we lived. It's was in an unorganized township. Property taxes were peanuts, and I'm in an organized township now, and the property taxes are crazy. One of the things I did, after I retired from working with Valet, I started my own consulting firm, and over the decade, I accumulated a bit of cash in the bank, and I didn't want to give it to Trudeau, so I rolled it over into an investment, and I bought a local motel here in Nipigon. So if anybody's ever traveling to Nipigon, and that means if you're driving from anywhere either east to west or west to east in Canada, there's only one highway, and that goes right through or right by Nipigon. So, if you cross the Nipigon River, that's the only highway that connects East and Western Canada. And that's where I have the motel. So if you're ever in the area, stop into the Birchville Motel, a little plug for my little business here. But the thing is, at this motel, I paid $14,000 approximately in property taxes, and I get absolutely zero services for that, other than the fact I can access the local dump, and I have to take the garbage to the dump. And that's kind of an example of what we get for our taxes here in Canada. Like, that's one of the crazy things, is that the largest chunk of our taxes goes to the federal government, and other than giving us grief, we get very little in positive return from them. Well, at least with the I don't even know what I really get from the local municipal government, other than the fact that there's a hospital here in town. We got a Canadian Tire. It's a very small community. It's only 1,700 people here. But I really like the small town, and that's one of the crazy things. There's a lot of opportunities, but for people, but no, it's jobs. No, if people can't find a job to pay the bills, then little towns like ours are dying. and the country as a whole is dying for the same reason. So, I've kind of gone off on a little tangent again.
That's okay, Alan. I appreciate the story, how you guys grew up, and that your parents at least persevered, and they did manage to buy a home. So that was good for them. Good of them. Alan, how about we sort of transition over to your website, The Purple Wave? As I scroll down, maybe if you could tell us, why did you start this?
Okay, so this started off as and maybe others don't. I was a candidate for the People's Party in the 21 election. And just a little background story with that, a little anecdote. I finally decided that, okay, enough's enough. I've got to try to help to fix things. Things are getting pretty bad. So I joined the local electoral district association for the People's Party. And I wanted to make sure there's going to be a candidate who actually had qualifications. Like in the riding I'm in right now, the MP is Patty Hadju, and up until 21, the only qualification she had was she had a diploma in graphic arts, and no real experience at anything worth speaking of. And so I figured, well, I'm going to make sure. So I applied to the party HQ to be a candidate, did the interview process, and this was for Thunder Bay Superior North, got accepted. And in the end, there were 3 other people expressed an interest for being a candidate. We had a vote. I lost that vote by 10 votes. And I was kind of down in the dumps. But the thing is that there's another close riding, Thunder Bay, Rainy River. And they had no candidate. And back in the 1980s, when I was involved with INCO, that was the riding I lived in and worked in. So I knew the whole riding quite well. And so I made it be known that I'd be interested to run as a candidate for Thunder Bay, Rainy River. And HQ said, sure. And did it. And the fellow who was the candidate for Superior North, Rick Daines, and myself, we did not too bad. We both got roughly around 2,500 votes. We came in distant 4th, but still, it was a reasonable showing. And then, after the day after the election, kind of down in the dumps and such. But we knew we had to do something. And like I said to you earlier, that it was suggested, well, let's do up a newsletter. Well, we didn't have any money to do a hard copy newsletter. And suggested, well, let's do one online. Like, it really doesn't cost much other than paying for, a website or whatever. There's really no cost to it. And that was Substack was in its infancy at that time. So we formed a page on Substack. And that's what we have here now is the purplewave.substack.com. And I jumped in as the editor-in-chief. And there's about 4 or 5 others volunteered to be on the editorial board and to be authors and such. In the end, for the first year and a half, I pretty much wrote 95% of the articles. And I still am a frequent contributor. A friend of mine, we met through the 21 campaign, the Oya, and he's now being very proficient in writing as well. So he and I are very close. We're 40-some% of the total articles each. And I really, really value his input. He's brought forward a lot of interesting thoughts and ideas, especially from the philosophical aspect. And there's two things that in previous articles that he wrote that really still resonate with me that apply to this day is that one is the Abilene paradox. I was not aware of the Abilene paradox until Leo wrote about it. And that's an interesting story in itself, and it illustrates kind of like what's going on with Canada and voters in general. And that there's a family in Abilene. There's a hot, sultry day down in Texas, and this family that lived out in the boondocks not far from Abilene wonder, well, what the heck are we going to do? And one of them suggested, well, why don't we go into town and have a nice supper? And they said, sure, why not? Okay, so they all went into Abilene, had a terrible time. The meal was no good. It's a poor experience. They got home, and then they all started comparing notes and said, well, I really didn't want to go. Well, neither did I. And it ended up being is that they just went with the flow. One person suggested something, and the rest of them just went with the flow. And that's what we're seeing here in Canada, is that people, rather than investigating what the best solutions are out there politically, just go with the flow. And nothing changes as a result of it. And the other one that gives me great solace is that Leo, as a teacher, he was a high school teacher. At one class, he had it where anybody late, they would have to do push-ups. And the number of push-ups depended on how late they were. And there's one girl, she was late, and her assignment was to do 12 push-ups. And right away, she said, I can't do 12 push-ups. And she was active with the high school basketball team. So she wasn't that she was physically unfit or anything like that. And so, well, you still got to do 12 push-ups. So she got down, she did 6, jumped up. See, I can't do 12. Well, you got half done. Well, try some more. And with some coaxing from the rest of her class, she got down. She slowly continued on. She did 6 more, jumped up. See, I can't do 12. But you just did. No, the rest of her class piped up and said, well, you just did 12. Oh. So Leo suggested to her, well, no, it's you definitely didn't get to your maximum because where you build up lactic acid and your muscles kind of stop working in that. Let's find out how much you can do. So with this newfound knowledge, she got down and slowly, methodically kept doing push-ups. And I think she got up to like 32 or whatever. You have to read the story to get the actual detail. But it's amazing that she went way above this artificial threshold just by going one push-up at a time. And that's where I go think of for ourselves of trying to grow our party is that one other person at a time. All we need is one other person. And if they do one, and that's a very simple math. You just keep doubling, and it doesn't take long. But it's a matter of believing in yourself and believing in the party that we're representing. And so here we are 3 years later. The Purple Wave is still going. We keep pumping out articles that try to be a little different, try to be encouraging, not to be that disparaging about the opposition, although some things have to be said. And that's like one of the things I keep pointing out about Pierre Poilievre. everyone, or a lot of people, believe he's going to be our savior. No. The thing is, look at his track record. Just over a year ago, in Parliament, they hosted, I can't remember his first name, but Hunka, an old Ukrainian veteran from the Second World War. And why was he being hosted by the Parliament? Because he fought against the Russians. And not one of them, including Pierre Poilievre, had that connected those two dots of that Second World War. And he fought against the Russians. Well, weren't the Russians our allies? So if he was fighting against our allies, who was he fighting for? And it turns out he was a Nazi. And 338 members of Parliament, including Pierre Poilievre, stood up and gave a standing ovation to a friggin' Nazi from World War II. And that's the guy that wants to lead our country. No, that's insane. Absolutely insane. And I know I've used that word already too many times. So this country of ours is just going insane. And a quick example of that is this by-election that happened just days ago in your neck of the woods. And I saw on a little bit of news that, the Conservatives won by a huge margin. Yet 16.3% of the electorate voted. That is friggin' terrible. That's almost 84% of the electorate did not vote. That is crazy.
It's absurd,
Yeah. The only positive about it is that I looked quickly in that the Conservatives in the 2021 election, they had roughly 19,000 votes. They lost to the Liberals, who had just under 21,000. And in this little by-election, almost 10,000 of those people came out and voted for them again. So that's pretty good, and that's one of the things I've noticed in all the by-elections that's happened since 21. The Conservatives, their base, have come out and voted. Nobody else does. And that's the thing. That's the sad thing about our party. That what was his name? Ian Kennedy.
Yes, Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah. No, that is embarrassing. That 133 votes. That's all they could get was 133 people to come out and vote for him. And it's not for. He's got nothing to be ashamed about. It's those like you and I that believe in this party, and we can't even go out and vote. No, that I'm sure in the in the 21 election, Ian got 2,500 votes. What happened to the 2,400 people there? Let's not bother. Come on, that is shameful. No. That's one reason I really value the fact I was a candidate. I now understand really that we just can't sit back and just think that our democratic duty is to just vote, because there's so much involved. Helping to get the word out. And that requires marketing. Marketing requires money, and we're skinflints. Or there's too many of us don't want to pony up a few bucks. Let's put it that way. No, it's something I've done a little bit of research of late, and I see it on locally as well. There's people that talk the talk for the People's Party, but they don't walk the walk. They don't And that walking the walk means donating a few bucks. It doesn't have to be much, anything. And I'm not sure what your situation is so far, but if you want to run a decent campaign, you have to raise roughly $50,000 to get a decent message out there. And it's feasible, because all it takes is, and also all you need is roughly 20,000 votes. If every person that votes also donates $20, well, that's a huge amount of money right there. Like, even if they donated $2, 40,000, 20,000 people donate $2, there's $40,000. So it's, and there's the thing is that there's more to just voting. You have to help the cause that you're trying to support. And that's the thing that I struggle with, that I have no problem doing it. Like, I'm not rich, like I say. Sure, I had a little bit of money and I just leveraged it. No, it's the bank actually owns this motel. But still, I donate to the party. I donate to the EDA. And yet there's hardly anybody else even in the EDA where I take part in, and we represent 3 ridings. And there's roughly 300 members in our 3 ridings. And out of that 300, I think we have maybe 10 people donate. Like, that's terrible. And from what I see, like from this by-election, it's not just here; it's across the country. Why the heck can't we get our act together? So,
It's actually
anyways, go ahead. You want to?
It's actually not just political parties either. I've been involved with a lot of nonprofits for like natural health products, health medicine. They also have a difficulty raising money, and it's an asymmetric war where we are struggling to raise funds and make people understand, whereas on the other side they have lawfare, they have the CRA to go after us, they have these NGOs that are getting money from charities, and they just know how to pitch these proposals so they actually get the money. So like somebody out in your neck of the woods, I think it was in Toronto, she got she got $750,000 grant to investigate why housing is sexist. Like I've been trying to tell this to the PPC. I'm like, why don't we just file these bogus applications and get some money for figuring out how elections are racist, and then use the money, embezzle it for other things. I'm joking, obviously. If anybody's listening, I'm joking. We're not doing.
Yeah. But that reminds me of something else that I've written about. Check it out. There's 2 articles I wrote about a book written by Elaine Dewar, The Cloak of Green. And she wrote this, I think, about 30 years ago in the 70s. It's a very well done piece of journalism. Unfortunately, she drank the Kool-Aid, because I exchanged some emails with her after I got this, because her book is out of print. A friend had sent me a poor quality PDF of it. I ran it through an OCR, optical character recognition program, and then cleaned it all up. Then afterwards discovered that there's an online library of books that have been scanned, and the one that I was provided, it's available there, exactly same version, but much better quality. But by doing the change, I've read through meticulously her book, and I found it extremely fascinating. And what brought this thought to mind was what you're talking about with NGOs, non-government organizations, and that Maurice Strong was really instrumental in getting a lot of these environmental NGOs going in Canada and worldwide, and using our tax dollars to finance this. So the mess that we're dealing with right now with the global warming group and such, we here in Canada provided the seed money for that.
It's
We are
really.
causing our own demise.
I tell people it's like being in a bar fight, but you're punching yourself in the face. That's why we're losing these
Yeah,
battles, because they're taking our tax dollars and they can fight effectively now that we've been kneecapped.
yeah, yeah, and we're seeing it in other examples. Like I just saw again on X, Randy Hillier. He's fighting the Ontario government, who are acting on behalf of the federal government to take him to task for his participation in the convoy when they were in Ottawa. Like the judge threw it out, and now the Ontario government is
Like,
appealing that judgment.
that itself is absurd, but there's like a video of he's been hit with a lot of crimes, but like one of his crimes, it's not even a crime. It's like things I would do at a concert. He took a fence and he like moved it,
Yeah,
rotated it 3 degrees, maybe a foot, and that's it.
yeah,
Like, this is out of control. Arthur Pavlovsky gave a speech, a sermon, and they're hitting him with terrorism.
yeah,
Terrorism.
yeah. Well, that's the sad state of affairs here in Canada. Is that the tyrants, and it's Trudeau's not the only one. And that's the thing, is like it's back to the parasites that I mentioned. They have infiltrated the head offices of all of the major parties in Canada, the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, the NDP, and that's one reason why they all talk the same talk. No, they keep saying, "Oh, well, we're different parties," but when you get right down to it, there is no difference. During the 21 campaign, I took advantage of it. That whenever I gave a public presentation, which was kind of sad in that they were few and far between, because I wasn't given much opportunity to talk to large groups of people. Like a quick aside, that in Thunder Bay, they had 2 all-candidate debates, and I was not invited to either of them because Maxine had been denied access to the federal debate, and that was because of Trudeau's friend and former Governor General, that I can't think of his name right now, ruled that, oh no, PPC, they don't have enough popularity, so we're not going to allow them. But it's okay to have the Bloc Québécois take part, even though they're only in Quebec. Like, so, yeah.
Yeah, things
Also,
are. Yeah, go ahead.
no, it's just take a look at the things that you've highlighted here.
Oh, yeah, we can quickly go through this.
Yeah,
One of the things you mentioned, like the 43%, 40, the average person pays 43% in taxes.
yeah,
Now I don't know what average is, but I have a theory that it's far higher than 43% when you take into account things like regulations. So
yeah,
like things that it's hard to put a dollar value on.
yeah. Well, most things follow the bell curve, or the Gaussian distribution. Okay, and right at the peak, that's the average. The mean. Like if if it's skewed, where there's a peak close to one axis and then it goes down, the average will be somewhere down that slope, and that peak is what they call the mode. But in general terms, a lot of things, especially with human activity, if normally follows a normal distribution, and that's where it's symmetrical. And so that's where the average is. It's that peak. So there's, like I was saying earlier, 50% are above, 50% are below. And well, that's the crazy thing about it is, it's the poor people end up paying more in taxes than the rich people, because rich people can find ways to not pay taxes.
Right.
And just like the insanity with no Jagmeet Singh, and it's an NDP standards that, oh, the rich will pay. No, the rich, if they're rich, if any of us was rich, we'd be out of this country. Like, I'm here in Canada mainly because I can't afford to leave. So I have all the incentive in the world to try and get change going on, but it's really hard where my fellow Canadians, our fellow Canadians, too many of us just do like the Abilene paradox, just go with the flow, and then
I've heard
wonder
that.
why things are going in the toilet.
I've heard that from a lot of people. They'd say if I could leave, I would. And the ones that are able to leave, and it's not always money, but it is. But sometimes it's transferable skills. Like doctors can't directly transfer their skills, lawyers can't directly transfer their practice, and they're stuck here too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, doctors can. They can. There's doctors. You can go to some other country where they need doctors. There's lots
I think
of.
it's just like for them, it took them a long time to get their hospital privileges here, and I guess it's a bit of an inconvenience for them.
It's an inconvenience, and also, and I can understand it. It's as one gets older, you kind of get tired of trying to keep up with things. So that's one of the things I look back on. I was very fortunate. I was kind of like, for much of my career as a geologist, I was at the leading edge of new technology. Computers came into use in the mid 80s. So, that's when I started using, as I was doing exploration work, I was one of the first ones to start using a computer in the field. Example was a Tandy 1000. I think it had 256 kilobytes of memory, had a 2-row display for text. And I had to learn how to type. In high school, I was the one class I never took. I took a course in Canadian law, but I took drafting and things like that. Even though I was in the academic program, I took as much as I could of other things to broaden my horizons. I did electrical, I did auto mechanics, I did carpentry, and then building construction, but I never took typing, and I regretted that. So, and then I got into programming, modifying the programming, and seeing new things, and seeing how things were going to be were going. And I saw early on what is now quite common, the geographic information systems. And I was involved in a bit of their integration into the activities, and so that's one of the highlights of my career. But still, you get to a point that, I'm getting tired of learning new things, and that's one of the things about, like you say about the doctors and such, is that I don't want to go through that again.
You get set in your ways
sooner or
after a
later
while.
you
Yeah.
hit the wall. Yeah, sooner or later you hit the wall.
Alan, we've passed the 1 hour mark, so we have to wind it down. But I wanted to share two funny comments from the audience. So Peter Biker says, "If I learned anything today, it's the amazing Abilene paradox. Fascinating stuff." And then he follows that up and he goes, "Maybe our parliament should go visit Abilene." Send them over there, and we don't want to back after.
Well, whatever. Check out the Purple Wave and those specific articles that if you go to the ppcgiant.ca website, there's a section on Oh, what the heck?
ppcgiant.ca.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. There you go, guys. So that's
And let's see
ppcgiant.ca.
here. Yeah, yeah. And okay, I'm trying to do it here as well, but of course there we go. Okay.
Tell me where to go.
And yeah. So you go to media and down to newsletter.
Media, newsletter.
Okay, that's all of our back issues of the newsletter, but under media, there's also the articles, Purple Wave articles. So at the top of that page, there's access to a downloadable spreadsheet with hot links in it to the first 150 articles with a little bit of summary as to what they're about. And that will take you look through that and you can go right there to the Substack article that it's referencing. And I'm just trying to recall here where the Abilene one is. It was, it's definitely in there's a section on the later page where I combined a bunch of articles that Leo had written that include the Abilene and put them in the form of an ebook. And it's in that section for sure, as well as that interval or that session where about his class where he had the one student. So that's a joint effort on both Leo and my parts, that he wrote the material and I saw the value and I put it all together.
So just to recap for the audience,
it's got a lot of useful things there.
You can go to ppcgiant.ca or you can go to thepurplewave.ca, and there's a lot of fascinating stuff there.
No, Purple Wave, the purplewave.substack.com.
I totally messed that up. Sorry.
So that's all right. No, it's a good reinforcement for people, because that's one of the things that I like telling people, that I believe firmly in it. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes. And the one reason being is that that's a great way of learning things, is that it reinforces it for you when you do make the mistake. It's just that when you make a mistake, try not to follow with encores.
Yeah, don't as long as you don't repeat the mistake
the first time.
Don't repeat them. Yeah.
That's
all
right.
right,
That's
Alan.
right.
I wanted to thank you very much for
So
coming on and volunteering your time. And I'm sorry if I talked over you. Apparently there's an audio delay.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
Oh, no. It's I really appreciate this opportunity. And hopefully you weren't disappointed in my ramblings here and such. But it's one of those things that obviously I'm very passionate about the Purple Wave, about the People's Party. And if we don't like what's happening here in Canada, we have nobody to blame but ourselves. And that's the thing, is we have to take personal responsibility. Oh, geez, what's that word? That's one of the key words for the People's Party, isn't it? Responsibility. And that's the thing I really, the fact that everything that is myself, my own morals, my own ethics, everything I wish in the world are encapsulated in the 4 key words that are part of that summarize the party platform: respect, responsibility, freedom, and fairness. And that keeps driving me. Like every time I keep thinking, oh, geez, why can't anybody join? I get down in the dumps or anything, and I start thinking about that. Oh, God, it just brings me back. I've got something to fight for, and that's the problem, that for most of my life, once I was 18, I was starting to vote just about every election. It was always, the choice was the best of a bad bunch.
The
And for
lesser of two
once
evils.
in
Yeah.
my lifetime, we really have a clear option, and that's the People's Party of Canada, because it's not corrupted, at least not yet. It has the risk.
Yeah, it
But
does.
that's the
Yeah,
thing
everything
about
has that
any
risk. Yeah.
volunteer organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Alan. Again, thank you very
So
much for
I
coming
wish
on.
you well. Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate this. And uh, I welcome another opportunity if you ever want to
Write
have me
another
on again.
article. Write another article, and we'll get you back, and we'll dissect it. Yeah.
I write articles all the time. Read tomorrow's.
I'll read it and I'll reach
In
out
fact,
to you.
subscribe, so you're right up to date.
I will, and I urge everyone in the audience to subscribe as well.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks, Payman. Take care.
Take care, Alan. Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Bye.